On this Wednesday night, immunizations and Omicron. How much does the new variant weaken vaccine protection, and is a third dose the answer? As Omicron spreads, restrictions return to the UK. Plus, no laughing matter.
And it was not socially distanced.
The uproar over a UK government Christmas party held during lockdown last year. Ottawa joins the ballooning diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics. The impact on Canada's already strained relationship with China. Name dropping.
People are ready for this kind of change.
The push to rename the award given to Canada's top athlete. And light show.
We heard a huge boom.
What just flew over Alberta?
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. As researchers across the world piece together data about the Omicron variant, early evidence suggests it may be milder than Delta, but it could be more capable of evading vaccines. In South Africa, people who have already had COVID or been vaccinated are getting reinfected. Now, Pfizer BioNTech says it's found a third dose of its vaccine will help control Omicron, though that study has not been peer-reviewed. The Omicron variant is spreading fast. It's been detected now in 57 countries. The WHO cautioned today it's too early to reach any conclusions and said that Omicron could change the course of the pandemic.
If we allow a mild disease to transmit unchecked, it will generate huge pressure in the health system, which will decrease the positive outcomes for people. And that's what we've seen with many before.
There are dozens of cases in Canada now, and it's expected that number will rise. But questions about just how transmissible it is and how severely ill people might become are not answered yet. Jamie Mauracher has our top story tonight on the preliminary evidence about vaccine effectiveness.
Third time's the charm, according to Pfizer, to keeping COVID's latest variant at bay.
3 doses against Omicron are almost equivalent to the 2 doses effectiveness we had against the wild type, the original variant.
But the company, which studied blood samples from Omicron-infected patients in a lab setting, also found the first 2 doses do make a difference against the variant, thanks to our body's multi-line defenses. The first, antibodies. To fight off a germ, your immune system custom produces an antibody that attaches to a marker on the virus called an antigen and signals the immune system to destroy it.
We're not facing the same pitcher, the starting pitcher from 2020. We're now facing, the second or third relief pitcher at this point in time. And each time we do that, we have to adjust as well.
Early data suggests this is why patients are appearing more susceptible to Omicron. However, there is also your T-cell response, which Pfizer found was largely unaffected by COVID's latest mutation. These cells, called CD8+, work by hunting for intruders. When they catch a mutated cell, in this case a virus, they attach and work to destroy it.
That's the importance of having 2 branches of our immune system, because it gives us better coverage.
Coverage ideally enhanced by another shot.
It may be that we might need to simply boost what we already have, or it may mean that we need to tweak.
Canada's National Advisory Committee on Immunization recommended boosters for everyone over 18 last week, and both Pfizer and Moderna confirmed strain-specific vaccines are already in the works.
We don't necessarily know everything we need to about Omicron yet, but the data that we have is certainly, setting up some alarm bells.
There you go.
A warning experts say we can't ignore. Jamie Mauracher, Global News, Toronto.
In the UK, there's fear Omicron could be dominant in 2 to 4 weeks. The government says early data appears to show cases are doubling every 2.5 to 3 days, and it's reimposing some public health restrictions. Starting on Monday, people in England are urged to work from home if possible. Face masks will be mandatory in most public places, including movie theaters, and the NHS COVID pass, which proves vaccination or a negative test result, will be needed to enter nightclubs and other high-capacity venues.
While the picture may get better, and I sincerely hope that it will, we know that the remorseless logic of exponential growth could lead to a big rise in hospitalizations and therefore, sadly, in deaths. But the single biggest thing that every one of us can do is to get our jabs.
At the same time, the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is apologising for a video that surfaced showing one of his staff laughing about a government Christmas party held last year during the height of the lockdown as hospitals filled with the sick and dying. He claims he'd been assured no such party had taken place. Crystal Goomansingh reports on the fallout.
With the days ticking down to Christmas, COVID and contrition topped the British Prime Minister's agenda.
I can understand how infuriating it must be to think that the people who have been setting the rules have not been following the rules, Mr. Speaker, because I was also furious to see that clip.
Furious at the content of a video obtained by British broadcaster ITV News.
His fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
The mock news conference, led by Johnson's former press secretary, appears to confirm a party did take place last year at Number 10. At the time, such gatherings were banned. England was in lockdown. After days of the government denying there was a party or that any rules were broken, Johnson launched an investigation. This government's handling of the pandemic has been questioned from the very beginning, and now many are wondering whether it has the moral authority to govern. Those who have lost loved ones during the course of the pandemic say the Prime Minister's continued defense of his staff and the videos make them feel sick.
They were talking about the party and cheese and wine, and then laughing about social distancing as if it was some kind of joke and not a measure that was in place to protect people's lives.
Amos Waldman lost his grandmother to COVID. She would have turned 95 this week. The pandemic virus also put his mother in hospital at Christmas last year.
Extreme anger, really, given the hypocrisy.
Allegra Stratton has now offered a tearful expression of regret for her comments and resigned. Others are being called on to follow suit, including the Prime Minister. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
Canada has joined a growing list of countries in a diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced the move today.
We have been very clear over the past many years of our deep concerns around human rights violations, and this is a continuation of us expressing our deep concerns for human rights violations.
The government says it spent months considering what to do about the Games. Michael Couteur has more on the decision and what it means for Canada-China relations.
We will not be sending any diplomatic representation to the Beijing Olympic or Paralympic Games this winter.
Canada is hoping to send a message to China while still sending its athletes to the Olympics. The move mirrors the diplomatic boycott already announced by allies like the US, UK, and Australia.
If we are concerned about, in fact, the erosion going on around the world on democracy and the rise of authoritarian regime, I think we have to take a stand.
That stand follows China's lengthy record of human rights violations, particularly for the treatment of the Uyghur Muslim minority. Advocates say it's a good first step, but it doesn't go far enough.
I wish Canada and the other right-minded countries around the world should do whatever is necessary to full boycott.
Now, Trudeau says that isn't in the cards. Canadian athletes were last kept home from the 1980 Moscow Games as a protest of Russia's invasion of Afghanistan. And this time, Olympians say the decision should be left to the athletes.
To rob our own athletes of their own voice and their own decision-making while we're trying to promote someone else's human rights, it just doesn't make sense.
China has threatened the U.S. will pay for its boycott. Trudeau wouldn't say if he fears any fallout, but the Minister of Sport did say security will be beefed up for athletes.
There's already agents that have been hired to ensure the security of the athletes, and we're still in discussion with the RCMP.
The IOC has remained on the sidelines of any political debate, citing historical precedents.
Could be the end of the Olympic Games, as it was the end of the ancient Olympic Games when politics got involved.
Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly says she'll continue to raise the diplomatic boycott with G7 counterparts in the coming days, in the hopes that more countries join Canada and other allies to send a strong signal to China. Donna?
Okay, Mike Couteur in Ottawa, thank you. The state of emergency in Iqaluit over its water crisis has been extended to December 14th. Work is underway to restore the city's water supply, which became contaminated by fuel. The Canadian Armed Forces has been using mobile purification equipment to make river water safe to drink. It's been nearly 2 months since Iqaluit's 8,000 residents were told not to drink the tap water. Members of an Indigenous delegation are hopeful their audience with Pope Francis will still happen, even if they don't know when. The visit to the Vatican planned for December has been postponed because of the rapid spread of the Omicron variant. As Abigail Beeman explains, the delay gives the delegation more time to collect their thoughts.
We're having one of our last meetings earlier this week, and we're just getting really excited. And
some disappointment, but youth delegate Taylor Bain-Takosa supports postponing the trip. It also gives her more time to strengthen what she wants to tell the Pope.
Really sharing the reality that even though I never attended, but still that the effects of them still linger today.
A message about residential schools with both darkness and light.
We don't just suffer the intergenerational effects. We also we're passed down the intergenerational legacy of healing and being proud of who we are as First Nations peoples.
The delegation of up to 30 people includes residential school survivors and Indigenous leaders. They're calling on Pope Francis to apologize.
All those apologies always fall short. They're always considered not enough and inadequate. I believe in the Vatican, they are ready for this kind of thing.
Experts say that today, apologies can represent a beginning and not an end.
It's one step in a very long process. So I won't be surprised if some Indigenous leaders find it impossible to accept an apology.
It's less of a call, but more of a reminder that that's where we would like to see this reconciliation start.
Métis National Council President Cassidy Caron says extra time allows them to work on messages and letters they want to bring from more Métis school survivors.
We have an opportunity to share with the Pope, like I say, the Métis Nation stories, who we are, who our communities are, how we represent ourselves, so that when he comes to Canada, he understands that there are 3 distinct Indigenous peoples here in Canada.
Delegates are confident the trip will happen. One tells us a new date is expected to be released before Christmas. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
In India, an investigation is underway after the country's top military general was killed in a helicopter crash in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. The Indian Air Force says General Bipin Rawat was among 13 people who died. Authorities say the Russian-made helicopter he was on a short flight when it went down in a hilly region. The general was chief of the defense staff and was working to modernize India's military. In France, police have released the man arrested in connection with the 2018 killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. They say it was a case of mistaken identity. The man from Saudi Arabia was arrested yesterday at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris on a warrant issued by Turkey. The man shared the same name and age as one of Khashoggi's suspected killers. Time to rethink an award given to the best of the best. Coming up, the push to rename the trophy awarded to Canada's Athlete of the Year. Canadian Olympic medalist Damian Warner is wrapping up 2021 with another accolade. He has won the Lou Marsh Trophy as Canada's Athlete of the Year. The 32-year-old won gold in the decathlon at the Tokyo Summer Games and broke an Olympic record doing it. He also carried Canada's flag during the closing ceremony. There is no doubt the Lou Marsh Trophy, which has been around for 85 years, is prestigious. But now there's a push to rename it. As Mike Dorley reports, it boils down to Marsh's poor track record.
Damian Warner is joining a gilded class of elite Canadian athletes to have won the Lou Marsh Trophy, and he very well may be the last. Because while Lou Marsh may be regarded by some as a sports writing pioneer, his work also relied on harmful tropes and openly stoked racist attitudes in the early 1900s.
His legacy goes really, really deep when we think about the impact, the way in which he influenced the way people thought about athletes, the way people thought about Indigenous people, about Black people, about Jewish people, about women.
Western University sociologist Janice Forsyth is leading a review of Marsh's work for the committee that oversees the award that bears his name, and will next decide on whether or not to rename it, which journalist Mark Hebscher says is a no-brainer.
No chance is it the Lou Marsh Award in 2022.
When Marsh died in 1936, the Toronto Star dedicated 4 pages to its former sports editor, a good indicator as to his influence at the time. The story spoke of him as fearless, ever fair, respected, while ignoring the racist comments and epithets which laced his columns. What he routinely wrote about the great Indigenous runner Tom Longboat, among others, is unprintable today. He opposed calls to boycott the 1936 Berlin Games, and while the Star's news pages were filled with stories about the terrible treatment of Jews in Nazi Germany, Marsh called it an internal German matter.
So you could say, oh, sure, that's the way they spoke in those days. No, they didn't speak that way unless influential people like Lou Marsh told them that it was okay to speak that way.
Forsyth isn't looking to erase Marsh's past. She sees him as a historical figure we can learn from, but not necessarily honor.
I hope we're at a moment in time where we can reconsider the name of this award for someone who doesn't have this kind of legacy. I think we're at a moment in time where people are ready for this kind of change, and now's the time to do it.
Perhaps by honoring someone whose contributions to Canada go beyond sport. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
Cracking the hot housing market ahead, a new way to help ease the burden of home buying. The Bank of Canada is keeping its key interest rate at a record low. The bank slashed its rate to 0.25% at the start of the pandemic. It's warning a hike could come sometime between April and September next year. High inflation rates aren't expected to fall until the second half of 2022. And with the rising cost of living in this country, budgets are tightening. A Toronto company is offering a new way to break into one of Canada's hottest housing markets. It's called co-ownership. Anne Gaviola explains how it works and why some industry analysts have reservations.
With the average home price in Toronto now nearing $1.2 million and the median annual salary for people in the GTA only around $60,000, saving enough for a down payment has never felt more out of reach.
There's a large cohort of Canadians that are squeezed out of the market, and they want most of the benefits of owning with the freedoms and flexibilities of renting.
Key is a startup offering co-ownership targeting young workers who feel priced out. One of the suites on offer is a 1-bedroom plus den 600-square-foot condo in a trendy Toronto neighborhood valued at $535,000. For an initial investment of $13,500, buyers get a contract locking in a 2.5% equity stake. From there, buyers must pay nearly $2,000 monthly, but can get on the path to home ownership, gradually building equity with the option to buy the property and take on a mortgage after 3 years. Industry analysts say that's significant. If your name isn't on title, it shouldn't be billed as co-ownership.
So it is more like a rent-to-own scheme rather than the way they're marketing it. I feel like what they're presenting is very, very misleading.
Key says this is a new model that's different from rent-to-own, and ownership is spelled out in a legally binding contract and certain rights over the property.
You have an equity stake that increases in value with the underlying asset. 2, you have a say in what goes on with renovations and customization. And 3, you share in repairs and maintenance on a pro rata basis. Key passes all of those ownership tests.
Former Bank of Canada Governor Stephen Poloz is among Key's advisors. The startup has 60 units, including some in the building behind me. With more than 100 people joining the wait list every single day, it has plans to expand beyond Toronto.
I think this will appeal to people that are having difficulty learning or knowing how to save and knowing what to do with that money. But then I would take a step back and say, if you're having that difficulty, don't become a homeowner.
One big unknown is what mortgage rates will be like in 3 years. There's still no shortcut to qualifying, and in this case, paying a premium to punt that into the future. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Next, a mysterious fireball lights up Alberta's night sky. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, even with camels. Every year, Saudi Arabia hosts a camel beauty pageant, and this year it has cracked down on enhancements. 40 camels were reportedly disqualified from this year's contest. They were judged to have received Botox injections and facelifts and other artificial touch-ups. Jurors are supposed to choose the winner based on the shape of the camels' heads, necks, humps, dress, and postures. But there is a $66 million prize at stake, so you can see why some camel owners try to push nature along. Some Albertans got an unexpected light show last night. Cameras caught something bright and mysterious streaking across the sky, and there was a loud boom. Some are wondering if it was a meteorite. As Heather Yerkes-West explains, it wouldn't be the first.
I was just getting ready for bed, and I heard a rumbling.
Caitlin Kostenuk isn't sure what her doorbell camera captured in the skies over central Alberta Tuesday night.
My husband and I immediately went to meteorite. That's what we thought right off the hop.
The flash came from behind the neighbor's house.
Whatever it was, Mandy McClanahan heard it too.
I was watching TV in my living room with my cat. We were just chilling. It was close to 10. And we heard a huge boom. My windows all shook.
It almost certainly is a meteor. It's not space debris. It was moving certainly too fast for that.
Fireballs like this one aren't uncommon. In February, a bright light streaked across the skies above Calgary, Edmonton, even Saskatoon. A flash followed by a boom can indicate parts of the meteor have made it way down to land. These pieces were found by University of Calgary researchers in 2017. But in October, one hit way too close to home for Ruth Hamilton.
It sounded like an explosion happening. Jumped out of bed, ran over and turned on the light and saw a hole in my roof.
The space rock landed on a pillow just centimeters from her sleeping head. This time around, Mandy McClanahan is grateful. It was just some light and sound.
Didn't hit the house and didn't hit the cars, so we are good.
Heather Yerkes-West, Global News, Calgary.
And that is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is the Port de Grey Peninsula in Newfoundland and Labrador, all decked out for the holidays. We'd love to see Your Canada, especially festive and joyful pictures this time of year. Please email yours to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.